Away. Here's a text from the 213 in LA. So far, Apple and Amazon are not exposing any interest in college football. Watch out. If those two start to stick their toes in the water, Apple is worth $2.5 trillion, Amazon $1.2 trillion. Nobody can get in the water with those two sharks. If they wanted to, they could eat ABC, ESPN, CBS, Fox, NBC as hors d'oeuvres and still have room for dinner. How fun would it be to see that happen? Doubt we'll ever see them involved. College football does not fit their culture.
Oh, it doesn't right now, but you never know how things will morph. But, yeah, I agree with that. Although I will say this, given my anti-Jeff Bezos and billionaire lambastings at the beginning of the show, if Amazon or Apple TV Plus wants to put this show on, then yay, billionaires. Go billionaires. But
if Liv wants us to do a show.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll go up in your wiener rocket any day there, Jeff Bezos. But I don't think it fits what they're doing right now. And if you look at what Apple is doing sports-wise, and Amazon's doing sports-wise, Amazon's going big with the NFL. Apple does a little bit of Major League Baseball, and they're doing, I guess they have all the MLS starting at the beginning of the next season, I think, if I'm right. And they're kind of going to gauge, how they perform on that if they want to go into a bigger fish. So we'll see. But I wonder who gets the Sunday ticket out of those two, because it's going to be one of those two. And then we'll see how they go on down the line for college football and other things.
Here's a note about what I was bringing up about opinions when we played the audio. Why is it everything nowadays has to be extreme this or extreme that? Either it has to be all Democratic or Republican. Got to either love this or hate everything about it. The NIL is imperfect. There are genuine concerns of things that need to be fixed. Otherwise, over time, it is going to be a mess. Why do people have to jump to conclusions and have lazy takes? I have asked that. This is from Joel. I have asked that question now. There is no, okay, that's how you feel, fine. It's like, like either way, both ways. We're all guilty, I think, of it. I try not to be, but probably I am. And I don't know if that's social media that brings that to the table or just everybody's angry. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it's both, quite frankly. I think there's a lot of cowards on social media that let all their feelings out there because there's nothing to really suffer from. I mean, there's not somebody can reach out and, slap you for what you said. You can just kind of, again, like there's just so many different walks of life. Like you're not necessarily seeing eye to eye with the person you're going toe-to-toe with on social media. Like, for all you know, it's a 12-year-old punk kid who's just ruffling your feathers and laughing at the fact that you're, you just don't know. But, yeah, that I don't – what is that even in reference to? I don't even know what that was in reference to.
No, it was just about discussions of Big Ten or Pac-12 and Big 12 and some of the arguments you see, sports fans or whatever.
Yeah, but I also think, too, there's almost this thing – I agree that everybody's got their own opinion and can't really settle on anything, but, also just complaining about people arguing over sports that's what's always happened, so as long as you don't start getting personal with it, because that's just, why would you do that? Then arguing over sports is just kind of part of the deal. It's part of what comes with the meal when you order it. But yeah, there's probably a little bit too much hate out there. But anyways, going back to the streaming part of it, with Amazon and all that, I guess they've given no indication that they could jump in. My question when somebody's brought up like, oh, what about Netflix and the Big 12 or SEC or whoever they could, just like what groundwork has been laid for them to broadcast live college football games, much less any sports. So for me, Netflix just seems like they're just way too behind the eight ball to be a part of it. And they don't really fit, I don't think, as far as like broadcasting live sports anyways. I don't think of that when I think of Netflix. I think of just TV shows, basically.
Well, they're about to do an ad tier, or maybe already have on Netflix, so that might lead them into that a little bit if they can get there. It's just they're going to have to reinvent their whole brand.
Yeah, or maybe it just makes up for some of the money for all of the original movies that they've made that are like very much hit or miss. I mean, the hundreds of movies they've literally made are TV shows under their studio banner. So that seems where their focus has been. So yeah, you don't think they're going to launch some brand new live sports platform in the next couple of years in time for them to be players and all this. But as far as Amazon, yeah, a lot of their eggs are in the NFL basket and other places as well. But I do wonder if like this does become more national, is where that maybe they come in. Because I can't see Amazon being like the Big 12 sponsor, because what does that ultimately do for them? Like if they were to jump in, you would think it would be like the NFL. It would be a coast-to-coast brand where they're going to get every eyeball imaginable. But that, could still come with the Big Ten. I'm not ruling that out necessarily. I think, streaming's been mentioned every time we've heard a commissioner talk about the future. That linear rights, streaming rights, those same phrases. So they're definitely looking in all those corners to find every dollar they can. And who knows, maybe some of those will be a part of it when all is said and done. But yeah, obviously, right now, it at least appears that we kind of know who the big dogs are in negotiations, and it's not those streaming giants, at least as we're aware of. But that will definitely be a part. That's why everybody needs to see the Big Ten deal. That's why we need to see this stupid deal that Kevin Warren said should be done in the next few weeks. Is like, who's the streaming partner? What does that mean? Who's the network partner? What does that mean? How many slots are taken up by Big Ten teams? What does that mean? How much real estate's left over? How much money's left over? There's so many questions, and quite frankly, they can't be answered until, like this is what I wrote about Mac Rhodes' comments earlier this week, is like there's dominoes that have to fall depending on where you're looking from. If you're in the Big 12 right now, it sounds great to go and poach some Pac-12 teams. But the Pac-12 teams don't really know which direction is safest right now. They think it might be safe to just stay where they are with Washington and Oregon in some sort of conference agreement, but clearly with no long-term stability, because they have to also acknowledge that Oregon and Washington could leave at a moment's notice and aren't keen right now to sign a brand new grant of rights agreement. The idea of jumping to the Big 12 sounds good, but you got to kind of see what's going to happen with Oregon and Washington and the Pac first, so you can't really make that move right now. Meanwhile, you're like the Big 12 and Pac-12 fans are arguing, but the Big 10's the one that's sitting there lording over all of it, and they're the ones that are kind of in control of the levers. And Kevin Warren's just laughing because everybody's getting mad at the Big 12 or vice versa, and it's the Big 10 that's pulling the strings.
Well, it's a move that's called the Texas.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Did anyone get mad at the SEC when Texas and Oklahoma joined them? No,
not really. I think it's because we just acknowledge who they are, though.
Yeah.
They're not pretending to be something that they're not. They're cutthroat, and they're going to do what's best for them, and everybody knows that, and that's why they do that. And it's like, of course the SEC did that. And it's just fun to, bag on Texas. And I think that Oklahoma definitely skated a little bit free. But, yeah, I mean, Kevin Warren's the one that's basically the SEC. And I don't know that people think he's – or the Big Ten. I don't know that he's been thought of to be cutthroat, but I guarantee you he will be now.
Well, he's a dog now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's –
but what were we just saying earlier? People were bagging on him 2 years ago. But now, clearly the picture is different.
He's cleared the room.
Yeah. And the reason I call that the Texas is because when A&M and Nebraska and everybody left the Big 12, they all did it and specifically said, well, I'm sorry, Baylor and Kansas State and Iowa State, none of this is about you. This is about Texas, and we don't like where they're going. And then Texas successfully got all the other schools to fight against A&M before they turned around and went, well, they're leaving, now let's talk to you, which was, I got to say, a stroke of brilliance.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you what Texas almost pulled off in that time was, when parents get divorced and they have to sit their kids down and say, listen, mommy and daddy don't love it anymore. It's not your fault. What Texas did was, no, mommy and daddy don't love it anymore, and it's your fault, Junior. Yeah. You ruined this marriage. That's what they did, almost pulled off.
Yeah. The 5-7-3. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that if you're in the Big 12 right now or in the Pac-12, I know we're all looking for answers, but there's other dominoes that have to fall, and that's, I think, the hard part is that, we do have to wait on Notre Dame, basically, to make up their minds on what they want to do. Are you going to be independent? Or are you going to go to the Big Ten? Or are you going to swing something with the ACC, which seems extremely unlikely? But until that happens, there's a little bit of a pause. On top of that, you've got the Big Ten and their TV negotiations. It's hard to gauge what the Pac-12 might garner, and it's definitely hard to gauge what the Big 12 might garner in a couple years if we have no idea what all networks are involved with the Big Ten, what all streaming services are involved with the Big Ten, and what those numbers are. Until we know that the Big Ten's going to have these spots on Fox and these spots on ABC and these spots on Amazon and these spots, wherever it is, we don't know what spots are available, right? So you need Notre Dame to figure out what they're going to do. You need the Big Ten to announce their media deal that they've been teasing all this time, and then the Pac-12. And that's what Mac Rhodes said yesterday in terms of, the Big 12. It's like they're on the hunt, and they're open for business. But quite frankly, there's nothing to hunt and there's no business to be done until the business is done in about 3 other places. And that's South Bend, Indiana. That's the Big Ten offices. And then that's ultimately the Pac-12 offices as well. So I'm very curious to hear George Kliavkoff tomorrow at that Pac-12 press conference to get a little bit of an update on where exactly the Pac is. They're definitely the least probably interesting and ultimately influential in what's going to happen next. But they are still influential and impactful in what's going to happen next. Just not as much, it appears, as a Notre Dame decision would be or the Big Ten TV deal would be.
It's not just one thing we're waiting on.
Yeah.
It's numerous things, and all of them are massive. And I would think that of the first one, Notre Dame, that's never going to change, or at least I say never. That's not going to change anytime soon. The Big Ten eventually will announce their TV contract. And I wonder if there was so much talk, just my thought, there was so much talk about how they were going to get $100 million, correct, distribution for each school. And then you add USC and UCLA, it might even be more. I wonder, just a thought, when they said $100 million per school, did they maybe say that too soon? Is it really going to be $100 million per school? How many teams are in the Big Ten? 14? 16?
Will be 16.
Will be, okay, 14. So you're talking about, there's going to be $100 million per school, and you're adding to, I know you hit the LA market. That is a massive amount of money. If it is fantastic for everybody involved.
Well, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that number got floated very intentionally. I don't know if it got floated before the LA schools. I want to say it might have.
It did.
But yeah, so I think that was just a very calculated number to throw out there. I think it'll also be pretty accurate. I think that they're basically speaking that number into existence and also using it as a tool to lure other programs, say, like, look at all this cash. I mean, look at what you're doing, and look at all this cash that we're making. Now imagine if you, with extra value, of which there are very few select teams that would add additional value, which is why the whole Pac thing's kind of muddied. It's like, does Oregon and Washington really bring that much extra to the table? Some will argue yes, some will argue no. They might even shave a couple million off because at this point you're getting to such high numbers that, like, who's really bringing more than that? So, yeah, I think that was very calculated. That was just part of the brilliance of what the Big Ten did and how they kind of played the game, was throwing numbers out there like that, seeing the big eyes that were like, oh, wait a second, we might be interested in that, and following through and being very calculated and secretive along the way. I mean, it's brilliantly done. It's brilliantly done by the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas as well. But, yeah, I think any numbers like that are thrown out or any vague threats, or if it's in public and it's at a press conference, that's intentional. That's all intentional.
Well, the early numbers were it could be 80 million, and then they kind of threw, well, it could be between 80 and 100, and then all of a sudden the LA market comes in because we know that wasn't something on June 29th. They were in the TV negotiation that said, hey, have you guys ever called USC and UCLA? See what they'll do. Their contract's up tomorrow. I bet they'll make a quick decision. No, that was something that was in the works for a long, long time. So, So they knew that. So when they throw out $80 million, knowing that they were about to pull the trigger and get the Los Angeles market in their footprint, and then, like we heard Mike Heller say, they've got New York, Chicago, and L.A., and D.C.
And then why not look at Phoenix, or why not? Yeah.
No. I mean, so they can say that before they even go to those places. They can say, look, we've got New York, L.A., D.C. In the market, or in the footprint. I think that between 80 and 100 should be more between 99 and 100. What do you guys think here at the TV networks? And they'll probably say yes, because Los Angeles TVs matter. Los Angeles TVs matter more than TVs anywhere else. How do I know that? In the World Series, or the American League Championship Series, but even the World Series, if it's the Yankees and the Mets, that first pitch is at 7:58 or 8:07 p.m. when the people watching the game, the majority of people watching the game, will be halfway on their way to bed, and Los Angeles is just tuning in. They do that for Los Angeles. TVs in LA are more important than TVs anywhere else. Bottom line.
It's a massive market, no question. All right, even though it's a pro sports market. Even though it's a pro sports market, you're talking about, of course,